y'all, and welcome back to Revolutionary Talk. I am one of your hosts, Jessica, and I got my partner here, Kentus and Kyra.
Hey, what's
This
up?
is our second episode of our podcast, bringing it to y'all, and we have our guest tonight from United Fort Worth, a great revolutionary organization in the city of Fort Worth. We have Pam, and we have Daniel here. Say hi to everybody.
Hello, hello.
How y'all doing?
Doing well, doing well. Glad to be here.
Good. We glad to have you. Y'all been real busy in the city.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So we just gonna, basically have a laid back conversation, talk to y'all about, what y'all been doing in the work. So, basically want to start off by asking, how was United Fort Worth created and what was the mission?
Yeah, so at the center of it, it was pretty much just trying to understand the dynamics of decision making in Fort Worth, and how there's misrepresentation as it relates to people in power, and doing the things necessary to assure that our communities feel that those institutions, that those spaces, that those decision makers are being reflective of the communities who are being directly impacted by huge issues. So kind of the birth of United Fort Worth was young people seeing that, in the Latinx community, Chicano community, Mexican American community, whatever you want to call it, seeing those leaders not stepping up and doing anything about issues that were impacting undocumented people. And in particular, this was in 2017, there was a piece of legislation that passed called State Senate Bill 4. Essentially what that is it was a legislation by the Republican legislature that was creating a law that gave police officers the ability to ask individuals their immigration status. And essentially what that is, it's a pipeline to, being stopped by a police, being asked the status, and expediting the process of deportation. A lot of times it's traffic stops, for speeding, for DUI, minor things that individuals, for the long part, can go through probation and try to do the things that they need to get that situation fixed, but they get deported. And we thought that this was an injustice because this is clearly discrimination by a majority white legislature who is trying to undermine and marginalize undocumented folks, brown folks, black folks who are undocumented, and continue to expand the system of deportation and criminalization. And so we looked around as young people and saw none of the folks who are in these positions, who are Latino, who are POC, are doing anything to put on force on our city council to say, hey, y'all better join on this lawsuit that is going to sue the state as a city to demand that this law be found unconstitutional. Nobody was doing anything about it. So we said, that's enough. We're going to start organizing and start building power. And it just started as like, let's do something. Yeah. And it's turned into like a meeting of like folks trying to say, let's do some stuff. And then before you knew it, like 20 people showed up, and then 40 people. And then it just created this movement. But that was a huge key that like folks are needing spaces, not only for the immigrant community, but for black and brown and, all folks, to build power in solidarity to really challenge these systems, and create more spaces where we can amplify the voices of communities who have been forgotten, who have been ignored intentionally by white supremacy, and just call it out and start building power so we can have, our voices listened to, but in a real political way, in a way that reflects the honesty of who our communities are, what those needs are on policy, on equity, on so many different issues. But from there, we understood that it shouldn't be one-dimensional organizing. It's not solely immigrant folks in Fort Worth who are being directly impacted. It's black folks by police brutality. It's poor people by gentrification. It's an array of issues. So that's when we started like really being intentional on creating a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-socioeconomic status movement of people who really understand this concept of, our liberation is tied together. Like, we are the only ones who can free ourselves. So since then, we've been doing some badass organizing that is deeper than surface level of like, elections, all the basic stuff. Like, we're really like trying to understand these systems, teach ourselves collectively what these systems mean, and try to create a new world that really like centers humanity and not capital.
And that's a great point, because y'all do so much, and we're gonna hit on a lot of those points in different programs and everything. But a lot of people that may watch this, they may know you, they may know Pam, but for the folks that don't know, like, a lot of people are really curious. Like, to me, this is my own personal opinion. Y'all are the face of United Fort Worth, but it's a huge. It's not just y'all. I know that, but to me, you two are the face. So I want to know, like, how did like an origin story? How did y'all like click up? And cause it's, let's be honest, it's rare when you see black and brown working together. And me and you had side conversation probably over the phone about the barriers with that. But how did this happen? You and Pam, who want to take it?
Well, I can tell my side of the story. So in 2017, like Danielle said, we were organizing around getting the city of Fort Worth to join the lawsuit against SB4. I didn't know anything about United Fort Worth before that. I started out organizing in Dallas with Faith in Texas, Mothers Against Police Brutality,
Okay, I heard of them.
Dallas Action. And that was kind of my entry into organizing and activism, and Next Generation Action Network as well. So, I'm driving 40 minutes across town to Dallas for all these meetings and, rallies and marches and organizing opportunities, to affect change for DFW, the state, and nationally. But I just didn't see anything in my neck of the woods. I'm born and raised in Fort Worth.
Okay.
Graduated from Dunbar High School, went to William James Middle School, grew up in Meadowbrook. And so I just never saw that opportunity here until I heard of United Fort Worth in 2017. I started seeing social media posts, about, hey, let's organize against this racist bill that is causing so much turmoil in the immigrant community and in our community at large. And so that really drew me. And I was thinking about it today. I don't know if there was ever any verbiage that y'all put out that said United Fort Worth is going to be a space for Black and Brown unity. I don't know if I ever saw that, but I sensed it.
I never saw that either.
I sensed it. And that was what drew me and made me, say, this is something that I need to be a part of, something that I need to engage with, and especially since it's right here in my backyard. So that's where I got in organizing with United Fort Worth.
Yeah, and I mean there had to be real vulnerable, honest conversation too. Whenever the idea of United Fort Worth came up, of course, like the passion was to fight this racist piece of legislation, but there was a overarching idea of building like this multiracial movement of all people, following this idea that our ancestors kind of laid of like solidarity work. And I had to be honest with where United Fort Worth was going on being a very, not only immigrant focused, but a very brown immigrant focused organization. So I remember us having a conversation and me being like, yo, Pam, like, be honest, like, how do you feel of the work that UFW is doing? And that's where the honesty of, we're not doing enough to do intentional Black and brown relational organizing. We're not doing enough to call out police. We're not doing enough to call out systems that are directly impacting Black people, and also tying those systems together and having this conversation on how these systems are intertwined, how white supremacy works in a way of being this large octopus, and it has so many different tentacles like ICE, deportation, like police brutality, mass incarceration, gentrification. These are all the tentacles of white supremacy, but at those beginning stages, we weren't expanding that to include all people. So that's when we did a hard transition to be more real about the work that we were doing. Because to be honest, when United Fort Worth started, that's the same exact time that folks were mobilizing in support of Ms. Jacqueline Craig to find justice for the attack of her and her family. And that's when it was like, yo, like, they're not listening to Dr. Bell. They're not listening to the organizers who are demanding justice for Jacqueline Craig. They didn't listen to us. And we both of our communities packed that city council. So they were ignoring both of our communities. So that's when we had this like understanding that we have to build in mass to not only understand these systems, but call these systems out in a way that really like is honest about the anti-Blackness within the brown community. It's honest about like how white supremacy and how capitalism is intentionally creating systems for us to fight for crumbs that the folks who are in control are setting up. You know what I mean? But it takes that intentionality on being honest about anti-blackness, on being honest about like our failures to not, with intention, reach out to black folks and do this multiracial organizing and create space for that work as well. So there was a point where that was like, let's be real, like that's not happening.
Yeah, you gotta have those uncomfortable conversations to make big gains. You definitely have to do that. In your opinion, like for people that may not know, like what would you say like is the mission of United Forward? What is the mission locally, nationally? What is the goal? What you like to trailblaze with United Fort Worth?
Yeah, I mean, the mission is simply, what Daniel's already talked about is to mobilize people in our community to fight against systems of discrimination, injustice, and oppression against marginalized communities, black, brown, low wealth, poor, LGBTQ, all of the communities that have been historically marginalized. That's what United Fort Worth is here for, is to organize with those folks, right? Because we are those folks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're directly impacted. This is our life. And so it's all about really empowering people to know that, yes, you do have a voice. Yes, you do have power. And yes, these are the avenues that you can take to exercise that power and to change what you see happening that you don't like, that's hurting your community, that's hurting your family. And so that's really the heart of everything that we do.
Facts. And it's sort of decolonial framework, like understanding that those in power created these systems intentionally. Like they were created by someone. Like they were created for folks to hold power. And it would be naive for us to say, nah, them fools aren't organizing anymore. They're not spending resources to hold power. They are organizing. The POA is spending thousands and thousands of dollars to continue to keep their people in power so that they can create policy that protects them, that supports them, that finances them. I mean, just today I saw on social media that they have this crazy new, anti-ballistic tank.
Oh, wow.
That continues this like militarization of the police, So we're counter-organizing what the people in power are doing to continue to keep hold of segregation in Fort Worth, to keep hold of white supremacy of the Fort Worth way. So what we're doing is we're a counter-narrative to that. And we're intentional in the way that we really understand that, resources shouldn't only be put into nonprofits who a lot of the times like waste resources and don't even put those resources into our liberation. And are afraid to be political. They're afraid to be political and be honest about the stuff that's going on. We're not. Like, we're going to speak truth to power every single time, no matter who has a problem with it, no matter how radical we have to be, and also try to do our best to bring folks within the movement together. Because honestly, like the more folks that we have in the movement, the more pressure we can put and the more access we have to communicate with our communities so that we can get consent from them on what kind of work we should be doing. A lot of the times, like, we read these books and we see these posts and we think we have all the answers, but our folks in the streets have the answers. Our folks in the communities have the answers. But it just takes a lot of resources and investment and time and healing and taking care of each other. We've been talking a lot about healing and how we can keep each other safe while we do this work. But the mission is very much centered on our collective liberation between all folks who have been oppressed and marginalized through capitalism, through white supremacy, and violence. I mean, it's straight up violence. Whether it's a black girl being, overly targeted in schools and the detention rates in Fort Worth ISD, or whether it's these racist white developers who are trying to gentrify Stop 6, Como, Northside, Poly, all that has to be called out, and we all have to figure out how we could do this within our spaces and have a common mission,
All right, so that was a great answer. So I want to get into the city hall election. So you guys did a huge, you guys endorsed candidates, basically to create a new city hall. Can you elaborate on, what brought you to that, made you guys want to get involved with the elections this year? well, I know you guys are always involved, but it was great and it was huge this year, the participation in it.
Yeah. We, all the things that we've already been talking about,
Yeah.
the disparities that you see in the city of Fort Worth, all of the horrible policies, that have either been passed or policies that need to be passed that haven't, and just continuing to basically talk until you're blue in the face to people who are not listening, who aren't trying to hear you, who are not trying to make the changes that need to be made for our communities to feel safe and to be, to prosper. So after, coming up against that so much, we started in 2019 actually getting into, electoral politics. So in 2019, we actually endorsed a candidate in District 6, Southwest Fort Worth, that we vetted, and we believe that this was a good person who would really promote and carry those values, that we need in our city. And District 6 is just so ripe for that type of change because it's such a diverse district, a growing district, a young district. And so that was kind of where we got our feet wet with that. And we had a lot of successes there in flipping certain precincts. We didn't win, the race, but we gained a lot of ground. And so this next cycle here in 2021, we decided that we were going to get involved again because, things still haven't changed, right?
Right.
And so you got to keep going, even when you have those losses, you got to keep going, you got to keep pressing. And we did, and we came back even bigger this time.
You had some victories too.
We did. We had some victories. So we ended up endorsing 5 candidates this time.
Major.
Yeah, very major. And that is not just because we decided to endorse 5 candidates, but it's because of all of the support. There are so many eyes right now that are on Texas, that are on Tarrant County, that are on Fort Worth. And so there's a lot of energy behind making change here because when this is a bellwether city, it's a bellwether county, and Texas is a bellwether state. And so when things change here, it's going to change everywhere. And so many people are recognizing that now, finally. So we had a lot more support this time, so we were able to move in a lot of different areas. So yeah, I'll let Danielle take it from there.
And I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's all building, right? Every single election cycle, every single advocacy campaign, every single like fundraiser, every single everything, like we're building the capacity to do more every single time. So this election cycle, it was building off of what we started off of the infrastructure of the learning. Elections aren't supposed to be for someone like me to get involved in. I mean, I had a felony at the age of 15. I was out of my parents' school. I was in and out. Like, I wasn't supposed to learn this stuff. You know what I mean? I wasn't supposed to learn how to do campaigns, learn how to talk about policy, learn how to do all these things. Like, we weren't supposed to be in these positions. But as soon as we started learning and understanding,
glitch in the matrix.
there's no way that we can turn our backs anymore to injustice that's happening and people abusing those positions who are also black and brown, who are taking advantage of how the system has put them in those positions and are perpetuating the same stuff that the people who have been there have been doing for years. And the folks who got endorsed, they didn't get those endorsements for free. They had to sign on to a platform and pledge to support a list of issues. If you're not signing that, homeboy, homegirl, you're not getting this endorsement.
A bold progressive platform that we were intending to work with, they couldn't get with it. And so, everybody was asking us, well, why didn't you endorse this person? They're progressive, they're a Democrat, but they weren't at the core, and they could not commit to what our communities need.
There was a candidate who was timid to sign on to the platform because the platform that we had was intended to stop no-knock warrants. And they were like, well, I don't know if I can do that. White voters are scared of this. Nah, fool, like that's it. We're not out here playing games. If you're not supporting this platform, we're not going to support you. And at the end of the day, we did get some victories, but the important intentional work comes now. You better follow up to this platform, and we're going to hold you accountable to everything that you promised. And while we've been learning on how to do elections, on how to create victories, because the candidates that won, they were outraised 7-1. Like, and I think I always think about what Dr. Bell always says. I remember Dr. Bell telling me a long time ago, because I was trying to ask him like who's in power, like how much power does Betsy, all these different questions, and he was like, look, these elected officials are only the managers of the ones who really call the shots. And when you look at these campaign finance reports, and what essentially that is the donations of who supports these candidates financially, you'll see who they are: the developers, the basses, the people who hold like economic power in the city, who, if they want something done, they're going to get it because they're paying for access to decision making. They're just managers. So now, understanding that, like, we need to take these seats back and put people who we, who have promised to follow this platform, and then hold them fools accountable. Because at the end of the day, every time that we go to city council and we don't have people who are responsive to our needs, it's just talking to a brick wall.
That's amazing, because once you get involved, you actually see how the machine works. And that brings me to another point. Pam, you made an interesting post on Facebook that got me thinking. You was talking about the runoff election. Can you give a breakdown, or maybe a short little brief history lesson, what you meant on that post about how the runoff election is used against us?
Right. So, and don't get me on all the dates, but there was a time probably in the late 60s, early 70s, when, this actually began in Georgia, runoffs, right? The runoffs that we know today. So there was fear amongst, white folks in power that too many black people were gaining on them in those political arenas. And so they were seeking some kind of way to really lessen that, and to stop them from gaining so many seats of power, especially in a place like Georgia, where there's a lot of people of color, right? And so one of the ways, there was this one politician, I don't remember his name, but he's the one who came up with this system of runoffs. And basically, what it does is it kind of dilutes the voting power for those candidates who might be winning, those candidates of color, right? So if they win in a general election, that has a lot of candidates in it, right? And they get a slight edge out of all of those candidates. That's not the majority of the voters, right? And so I think that's really the argument that they used to kind of shield what they were really doing, which was racist. That's really what it was. Keep the black folks out, keep the brown folks out, let's hold our power. But as demographics are changing, like they still are, they saw, we got to do something. We have to throw a wrench in here. And that was the way that they did it. So now you get that slight majority. Okay, you won that election, but now we're going to go into a runoff, which is basically the top 2 vote getters, right, out of that first pool. Now they go head to head, and whoever gets the most out of that race wins. So you're basically having to run twice. I think on that post that I shared, there was a video of a black politician in Georgia, who won his race outright. I believe he got 35% or something, and he won with that percentage. But then he went into a runoff and lost to someone who didn't even get as many votes as him the first time around. And so these are the tactics that are being used to dilute the power, to try and take away the voice that is gaining and growing in communities of color. It's really a racist system that's really only happening in 7 states in the South, right?
Wow.
So
Every
only
state
seven.
doesn't do this.
So
Yeah,
only
wow.
7 states
Yeah.
only do runoffs.
That's right.
So okay,
And that's what they're gonna do every time. They're gonna try to create.
because we
systems.
just seen that happen here
Yeah.
in Fort Worth.
Yes.
We had Deborah Peoples
Mhm.
won the main election,
First place.
but
Sure
she
did.
only had what 49, 50
About 45.
33, I want to say it
percentage
was.
of the votes.
To Maddie's 31 or something like that.
Yeah. So basically, in this election, she won. So basically, all the conservative, they just said conservative white people that voted for the other
Mhm.
conservative white people in the runoff, they just gave those votes
They coalesced together behind
to her,
the
to
loser.
Maddie, the loser, Maddie Parker.
Yeah.
So that system is being in place in mostly southern states, probably.
And why is that important? Because in southern states, that's where voter suppression is the most egregious, right? And so it's hard enough to get people of color who have been suppressed and disenfranchised to come out to one election. Now you're asking them to come out again a month later.
A month later.
What? And then you're asking those candidates who represent them, who are seeking to represent them, to have the resources and the energy and
To do it
all
again.
that they need to do this again a month later. Like, that's intentional.
So
That
how
is
can we
intentional.
stop it? What can we do to get the runoffs out the book, or as a concession when it's a runoff, have it sooner?
Well, part of it is they really, first off, they undetermined Deborah Peoples and her movement. And they undetermined what work that we were doing. They had no idea that they were going to lose. They were so confident. When you looked at Maddie Parker's website, all of the establishment, all the power brokers, were in
All
her
the
endorsement.
billionaires.
Yeah.
All the
Wow.
billionaires, you see all those names. When you looked at her campaign finance reports, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and Deborah still won.
She spent like $2 million this
$2
year.
million.
She spent $2 million.
Racist attacks through mail every single day.
I got them every day.
Every single day, and Deborah still came in first place. So they out of fear spent another $1 million just to win in that short, crazy time frame. But they undetermined the power that we had, and that's how we won those 2 city council seats. It was because of the mobilization that we did and the effort that we put in, that our people power beat their financial power
Yes.
that they had. Our people power won at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Our electoral work, we only talk to black and brown people.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
We talked to black and brown people. We talked about the issues. We had real conversations at the doors, and folks who never voted before, and they participated. They came out. They showed out, and we won.
Yeah.
So that's just one way I know that we can talk about how to end runoffs. But our people power won this time, and as we continue building, our people power will continue winning. Not only in elections, but also in discussions of policy, also in our autonomy and black and brown owned businesses, and so many different things. Our people power is going to win every time as long as we're organized.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best part of that, of what you said, is that it's the people power. Because when people see that, and I think definitely the community needs to be educated on what you guys did, because a lot of people don't think that we could work together and beat that higher that higher system, that system with all that money and this and that. But you guys made an example out of that. You organized with the people. They had millions. And you were still able to mobilize, even though no, Deborah Peoples did not win. A statement was made when she had the majority of votes the first time.
Right.
That was a huge statement that was made. Right. So I definitely glad that you said that people need to understand, if we come together, we can do anything.
Right.
We've
been doing this.
Yeah.
We've been doing this, not United Fort Worth, but the people who came before us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the civil rights movement. Look at the Chicanx movement. Mm-hmm. We've been getting these wins when we come together. Right. The people power is greater. Organized people is so much greater than these dollars out here backed with all the hate. Mm-hmm. We can do it, and we've done it before, and we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, and again, they're organizing. That's the thing, that they've been set up these systems, so they're going to always try to maneuver ways to continue to hold on to that power. They're pissed. I know they're pissed.
Oh, they big
They're
mad. They
big
big
mad
They
right
big
now.
mad.
But
Big
that's the
bag.
thing, like we can't get comfortable. We have to
Yeah,
continue
right.
building our own political.
They coming back
infrastructure.
strong. They gonna come
Oh,
back
yeah.
harder, stronger, and come in probably with a vicious attack. They coming back. So we can't get comfortable now.
Yeah.
Like I always tell Jessica, like I'm so scared right now because I feel like the people are about to get comfortable right now, and me and her, Jessica, we talk nonstop all the time. I'm like, we gotta keep the pressure on. We gotta keep going. We gotta keep organizing. We gotta keep whatever we was doing last year. We gotta do more of it. You know, if we got to make new allies, the allies we do have, we got to build stronger relationships with them, because it's not the time to go to sleep right now, because they're coming, they just regrouping right now. So, oh man, that's amazing. Like just watching y'all in the battlefield, just made me like get more motivated, and
it was very motivating.
yeah, it was motivating, man.
and
Just
that's how
watching.
we keep going. You know, as much as you said they're organizing and they're getting stronger and they're going to come back stronger, so are we.
Fact.
We're not stopping.
Yeah.
We're growing, and we have the numbers greater than theirs. So just imagine if we keep going, like you said, if we keep building, we cannot be stopped. I don't care how strong they get, how much money they have. They cannot overtake all of us.
Exactly.
And they're expecting us to get tired. They're expecting us, of course, they're expecting to get into our movements and destroy them internally. We've known that not only in the Black Panther Party movement, but in the Chicano movement and all of our fucking movements. Sorry, but
No, you good.
Good.
but we have to take care of each other when we're doing this work.
Yeah.
So it could be sustainable, so that it could be long term. We have to take care of each other, not only emotionally but financially. Let ourselves live holistically, and even within our movements, break down the power systems that are marginalizing our own folks within the systems, like men taking up too much space. You know, us not accepting our people of how we express ourselves. Like, there's so much that we have to do internally to continue this movement and make it an inclusive movement where we're bringing everybody in and everyone feels safe being a part of a radical revolutionary movement. Honoring the people who are doing badass work out here, like Kendra from Fucking Town Fridge.
My dog.
You know, so many people out here doing dope work, supporting that and supporting each other and the lanes that we're working in, and also putting egos aside and not being territorial and understanding that, like, if it's not to serve the people, then we're doing a disservice to the work that we're portraying. Because at the end of the day, like, our people still are out here, and people are still out here getting shot. Kids are still being pushed out of schools every single day that we're not focusing on the movement. So taking care of each other, seeing the bigger picture, and breaking down barriers between our communities and between even within our work, so that it could be sustainable and long term.
And speaking of that, like they get real specific. What are the programs? A lot of people just know United Forward, this major organization that's doing great things, but y'all do so much. I think a lot of times people focus on your involvement in the elections, but you do so much more. You want to talk about the other programs or things you did, because just remember during the riots and stuff, y'all was helping people get out of jail. That's just one example. Y'all want to talk about some of the multiple things y'all are involved in?
Yeah, that's one of them. We have 3 areas of focus that we really move from, and then we do, all kinds of other things. But immigration justice, criminal justice, and then civic empowerment.
Okay.
So I lead our criminal justice action team, and I guess it was this was after Jackie Craig. Okay, in 2016, 2017 is when the city enacted the Race and Culture Task Force. And we heard that they were going to be finally making a recommendation to implement a Citizens Review Board. And this, of course, we know is something that the community has been asking for years and years. Chris Nettles, when he ran for mayor in 2017, that was his main platform plank, was we need a Citizens Review Board. So we saw that was coming down the pipe. And knowing Fort Worth and how they operate at the city, we knew that it was going to be some old watered down mess. And so that's when we actually started meeting with other organizers in the community. And we came together and said, we need to organize. We know they're going to present their version of what oversight looks like. Well, we need to actually bring the truth. We need to make sure that the community is educated and that the city is educated on what we mean when we say we want oversight, independent oversight of the Fort Worth Police Department. And so we formed a coalition with other organizations called the Tarrant County Coalition for Community Oversight.
Okay.
And from there, we started advocating for effective independent community oversight that brings transparency, accountability, and fair and equitable policing in every neighborhood. If we're going to have police, they're going to be fair across the board in every neighborhood. And so that's one of the programs. And so through the coalition work, we were actually able to get a working group installed. So the city was just going to give, this report to the city council and say, okay, y'all vote on that. Y'all want to do this? Y'all want a citizen report? This is what it look like. Here you go. And so we said, no, you can't do that because you haven't talked to the community. You haven't educated the community on what this is about when the community is the one who asked for this. And so we asked for a working group to be convened that is impaneled by community members as well as people from the city and other different stakeholders who are going to be part of this program. And the oversight monitor that we got as well. And so we got that. After a year of meetings and negotiations with people who didn't want to listen, some of them are no longer on the council, thank God. We finally got this working group.
Okay.
And I'm on the working group.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, I've been in those meetings using all of the feedback that we got. We had several community meetings, town halls where we would talk to the community, educate them on what this is, hear from them what they wanted in oversight, what were the things that were important to them. Also, we've met with people really all across the country who are already doing this in the cities that they're in. The NACO, the National Association for Community Oversight, something like that. The president actually met with us. And I won't get into that story, but it's just really been a team effort. And yes, Dallas, that's what I was trying to remember. The Dallas Coalition for Community Oversight for Police, they have been instrumental in helping us really build
So
this
we
program.
have a viable oversight right now in Fort Worth?
We don't,
We don't.
not yet.
What are the issues?
So right now, the working group that I was talking about,
Okay.
the purpose of that working group is to have an informed report and recommendation presented to the city council to vote on.
Okay.
So even though the task force on race and culture made a recommendation to have an oversight board, really they made a recommendation to have an oversight program. And in turn, the city turned around and hired a police monitor and created the Office of Police Oversight, which is great, but that's not what we asked for. We asked for a community board that would give the community stake in overseeing the police and making sure that they're held accountable because they're in our communities. And so that's what this working group is doing. They're coming together to make that recommendation strong before it goes to the city council to get voted on.
So it's still a progress that can possibly happen.
It's still in progress. And so hopefully within the next, 3 or 4 months, that recommendation will be completed and presented to the city council to vote on. The folks that we endorsed in this round, that was one of the things that they had to sign on to is that they would vote yes on a community police oversight board. And so that's what we're moving toward.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of the work has been, responsive whenever the protests happened, supporting folks who were put into jail by bailing them out, and Pam, the amazing work that she's been doing with the Community Bail Fund, that has been liberating our people from an awful system within the Tarrant County Jail that is destroying our folks, like destroying the most vulnerable people and holding them because of their not having those resources just to bail out for some ridiculous things and being in such a dangerous place. Our work that we're doing to support our immigrant communities, and not only that, but having programming for our folks, like doing intentional work, not only to do advocacy, not only to do protests or elections, but also creating a space through the Justice Center, which is the space that we have to learn, to talk about political education, to talk about our history, to create space where we can be and feel safe, and provide resources for the community. So we're about to start having boxing classes for young people, for the poly and for 76105, free boxing classes just to give youth a space to have that recreation who can't afford to go to a class. We're about to start having English classes for our communities who still haven't had access to be able to learn the language in the country that they've been living in for years. We're doing the Freedom Summer School. We're talking about Black history, where we're talking about Chicano history, where we're talking about these issues. So we try our best to not be one-dimensional in our work, and we're only doing, protests, or we're only doing elections. Nah, this takes a whole capacity of different strategies, different tools, different ideas, different imaginations on how we can change these systems, and how we can get just representation and an equitable distribution of resources to our folks. And if the city won't do it, we're going to do it ourselves. You know what I mean? We only have ourselves.
Sit around wait on no one.
No, and we're not going to ask for permission to do this work either. We're going to continue to fight for the resources to do this work and to support our own folks to do this work, folks who have been directly impacted, who are from these communities, and giving the space to be able to do this, because it's a lot of labor, and it could impact the body, it could impact, goals, it could impact so many different things. But keeping healing at the center, I think, is something that's been able to have us doing so many different things. And trusting each other, and being honest with each other when things get difficult, and just being straight up, you know what I mean, and learning from each other, and respecting each other's imaginations and visions, and finding a way to implement both and have compromise that doesn't make ourselves feel like we're selling out. I think that's important, is trying to do the best to do this advocacy work and continuing to be our authentic self. That's so important. And I think because of and we're still working on it. A lot of people are like, man, y'all got it together, but heck no.
It's no like.
Yeah, you always be a work in progress. There's always room for growth.
It's always room.
Yeah, always.
Jessica tell me every day I have a lot of room.
I'm on his ass.
Yeah, no, it's important, because we're still trying to decolonize ourselves, with ideas that were created to keep us thinking a certain way. So decolonizing those things and being true to ourselves, and trying to think of, because honestly, we're here because Anglo-settler colonialism put us to be here. Our segregation exists because of Anglo-settler colonialism. People in our original spaces, we were living, we were thriving. The civilizations that were being created never had an opportunity to come to its full self. We were colonized. My last name, Garcia Rodriguez, is not an indigenous name, it's a Spanish name. We aren't Spanish people, we're colonized by the Spanish, who were white, who came and raped the women who were indigenous to create this mixed race people. And there's a lot of deep history. So trying to break those things down while doing this work, it takes a lot, but that's the work that it's going to take if we're, going to be able to for that fulfillment of our ancestors who fought so hard.
It's a lot of work, because like you said,
we gotta dig deep.
We gotta dig deep, because at the end of the day, we was born into, for lack of better terms, in the zoo.
Mm.
We wasn't born in our natural habitats,
Right.
so we don't know really how we should be. We came in the world with a colonized mind from the beginning, and now we got to spend half our time trying to grow, and half time we fighting within ourselves because we fighting the colonization that we was born into. So altogether, we have an internal fight and an external fight. We dealing with within and outside. So, but it's amazing that we still winning. They beat us up, we fall down, we get back up and whoop their ass some more. So it's amazing. It's at the end of the day, who gonna get tired first? And I see they look like they're getting tired.
We're not doing it.
We're not getting tired. We keep bouncing back every time they can assassinate leaders. We bounce back. We get more leaders. New ones come up. They can poison us, do this and that, colonize us, put us in chains. We come back stronger, more resilient than ever before. So, if anything, we should be looking very hopeful, just knowing that every time they beat us up, we come back stronger and they get weaker. But man, yeah, I love that. Love that, guys. Other than that, I know you touched on the Freedom House.
The
Justice House.
Justice Center.
Justice Center.
Justice. I don't know why I get Freedom House wrong. Justice Center. So.
Freedom School, that's probably what
Yeah, because y'all have the Freedom School going
Yeah.
on. But the Justice House, I know we got a short amount of time, but briefly, just let's talk about it. Man, when I saw that, just because every time I see something, I'm calling I'm like, oh my fucking God. I was like, United Fort Worth, they got headquarters. I was like, man, this shit look dope as fuck. So I'm
He was
getting
like,
her.
you coming there when y'all had events after? I'm like, I'm coming on my way.
I'm like, man, come on. I'm not going by myself. Somebody going with me. You coming with me. Come on, meet me over there. So, man, tell us about that real fast. I know we got a short amount of time, but real quick, let's talk about that Justice House.
Yeah, Pamela.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give this to you, Danielle, because this is your baby.
Well, I mean, I've just known that we needed a space. Like, that's it. Like, there's so many spaces that are invasive, that are continue to exploit us and demand payment to be able to hold space there, and, that aren't culturally responsive, that we don't see ourselves in the art, we don't see ourselves in the walls. So there was just a vision, especially from what I see from the amazing work that they're doing in Oakland and Los Angeles and in Georgia and other places like San Antonio, where they're creating spaces for revolutionary thinking, for abolitionist work, for mutual aid work, for political education, for an array of things.
Yeah.
Not only for those very hard line things, but also for the celebration of Black and Brown existence. And activities that see our humanity. So there was this long vision of finding a space where we can have dialogue, learning, living that is our own, you know what I mean? That we don't have to ask for any kind of permission. So that's where the idea of creating a space for learning, for education, for, a space that we can just give the location out to whoever needs it. It was tough because we opened it, y'all were at the grand opening.
Yeah.
It was right before COVID hit. And we had 120 people there, people from Dallas were coming,
everyone.
it was just amazing. And then COVID hit. So that was horrible. But we were able to have some amazing classes. We had a Know Your Rights class on what happens when you get stopped by immigration. We had a political education class about the Black freedom movement. We had, all kinds of classes for the first month, then COVID hit, and it stalled a lot of the things that we were doing. But now, as things are getting a little bit more comfortable, we're straight back into it. Yeah. We're into the political education. We're into allowing people to use the space. We're into doing real stuff where we can, allow ourselves to be vulnerable, but continue the mission that our ancestors laid for us on creating our own imagination through the walls, through the discussions, through the activities that we're doing. And again, not wait for anybody to do these things for us. Because a lot of times we try to find even a place to meet. And we got people talking over here. We got people watching our what we're doing.
Sign up 3 weeks in advance. Got to put a down payment.
All that mess. So now we have our own space. And we don't have anybody bugging the phones or watching us from this tower, but we can do our own. And it's not UFWs, even though that the name's on it. We want to be able to like share it with everyone who needs it, who needs to use the space, especially now since COVID is lessening. Let's do whatever we want to do. You know what I mean?
Freedom.
In the space, right? But it's really much centered on the idea of we're the only ones that's going to save us at the end of the day.
That's facts.
Yeah, that's very true, because that we can only depend on each other and our networks and our connection and building those relationships and finding like-minded people with the same ideology.
And these relationships are important, yo.
Yeah.
Like we've had a relationship for a while now.
Yeah, for a while now.
And you know, I remember that and whenever the El Paso attack happened in the border, and we wanted to have a vigil, we started getting like intel from different people that like white supremacists are gonna come to your vigil, and it was like, oh damn, and who did I called you, and y'all pulled up and y'all kept us safe and protected us, and we felt comfortable because BM was there. We weren't gonna call police. That wasn't gonna make us feel safe. So these relationships that we're creating are important. So again, this is like true when we say like our liberation is only tied to each other, because no one else is gonna protect us. No one else is gonna support each other. So we have to like continue bridging these relationships, putting ego aside, stop being, and I don't mean us, but in general, this organizing work, stop being territorial about it.
Right.
Because the movement isn't going to start on itself. Like it's going to take all of us to do it, you know?
Yeah, it really is. It really will take a village. But at the same time, I think we have the political education at the same time to know who we can't work with as well too.
Sure.
And man, and that's, I'm gonna get y'all opinion. I don't want to put my bias on it. Like, do you see like just people you can't work with just because of ideology? Like a lot of times, like I'm stubborn as fuck, and I'm just go worse. I'm more willing to work with people. I'm more willing to work with people and just be like, hell no. I'm the nice person. People think I'm the mean one.
And that is true. I am.
I'm the nice person. I like just what about, but just like no. So with ideology, how much ideology is a factor in like who you will and will not work with?
No, that's huge.
That's huge.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, just straight up, that's huge. You know, what you believe and, you know, how you move and what you do with the resources that you have and in your community and with your platform.
Yeah.
It's very important, and it goes into a lot of the decision. I mean, it has to.
Yeah.
In order for us, we're talking about building community and safe spaces and, you know, sustainability. You can't have any of that, you know, if you have people who are diametrically opposed to what you're trying to do, you know. Not to say that, you know, we don't work with people don't agree with on every point. No, of course. That, you know, that's between us. You know, there are certain things that we don't. Right. But
we need to send people through that the justice system, political education class. They got to get a degree before you can get into the movement.
And the funny thing is, there hasn't been a lot of white people that have been coming out to any of our stuff, at the Freedom School stuff.
No, there hasn't.
They haven't come. Where?
Haven't been coming to the summer school political education series. It's been mostly brown and black folks that come into those classes. It hasn't been white people. So it's been very interesting because that's the first thing that I think
the marching
about.
and stuff that died down, you believe? Or?
I don't know what it is, but I mean that kind of plays into what you were asking about, you know, differences and things like that. We talking about white people, allies, right, coming in to the work. There's a certain way, you know, that has to happen.
It's a process.
Right? It's a process, and everybody's not comfortable with that process. And so, you know, when things get maybe tough or hard, they might fall to the wayside, right? Because they can pick it up and put it down.
Right.
We can't.
Right, we cannot.
You know. So a lot of those things just take care of themselves. You know.
Right.
But yeah.
And yo, this isn't supposed to be fun work. Like
Mhm.
a lot of people think that this is like for the cloud or for fun. Like this isn't fun.
Mhm.
We spend so much time like, I mean, I'll be vulnerable and honest. I've cried at so many moments.
Yeah.
Like especially like when community who has been impacted by these systems talk about the trueness of this stuff. This isn't for fun.
No.
This isn't a game. Like people's lives are in danger.
I be about to quit every week.
It's real. Like and especially when people are abusive in the spaces, like that's it. Like you can't come into the space and hurt our folks.
No.
Because like
Yeah.
if we're trying to build, like we have to build it with each other and not allow people to come and take advantage or take up too much space in the movement. Because you know my biggest idea of like, and I've learned this from so many people, it's a maskless revolution, that it's not about Pam and Daniel, it's about all of us and building this collective movement. But I have a down meter. If you're not down, when I'm like, if you're not down with, if I hit you up and I'm like, yo, we're about to shut down Maddie Parker's event or something, and if you're not down, we might not see you for that long. You can't just like enjoy this when it's about a protest, when it's about like a class. Like you have to be down with it and be down with it, to whatever capacity your mental health feels comfortable with. Because everybody has a place in the movement.
Yeah.
Everybody has a place in the work, and we can find something for everybody. But if you don't respect our dignity and are honest when you make mistakes and are able to keep yourself accountable, and you're all about power and you're all about ego, then there's not that much space for you in our work, because we see a bigger picture that is connected to reaching abolition, to reaching full autonomy of our spaces, of reaching a space where we can talk about real history that has equitable distribution of resources, where Tanglewood isn't in Tanglewood, where it's in Poly, where it's in Stop 6, the resources in the schools and the textbooks, where our folks are able to walk down the street and feel safe, are able to see fresh foods, are able to see all the things that, you know, tell them that their life is important.
Right.
And that they don't have to do, continue to feel like they're the ones who are the problem in society.
It gotta be a huge weight, especially you, Dan. I'm gonna put the back pressure on you. Like, do you feel the pressure? Because I'm gonna be honest, I don't see nobody else doing what you're doing. Like, as as in your race, as your culture-wise, race-wise. Do you feel that way? I'm gonna be honest. I don't see no other Daniels in the country doing this, bridging the gap. At least talking to your group of people and working. And you changed a lot within myself, because I'm gonna be honest. I was closed off. I like this shit ain't possible.
Right.
It can't happen. And you changed my whole outlook. I'm like, fuck what everybody else think. I'm gonna work with this dude. Like, he changed my outlook. He made me a believer. Do you feel that pressure on you? Because no one else is really going in like you.
I mean, the honesty is that like young people, they see it too. Like, I can name so many people within the spaces that I'm in, who have taught me and who we have collectively like learned together. Folks that have showed up in all kinds of organizing, and continuously calling out our own, because it starts like at home, like deciding that it's not okay whenever one of my family members says something that's anti-black. It's not okay when I hear it in the streets, and it's not okay for us to stand by and not to do something about injustice that's happening to all of our folks. And calling out those folks who are brown, who are Mexican American, who are Chicano, Latinx, who are taking up space and are appeasing to white supremacy. So it takes calling that out. It takes being honest and being reflective. And I think a lot of it has to do with my upbringing. I primarily went to poor black and brown schools. I've had relationships with black folks all my life, because that's where I lived, the apartments, the schools, and seeing the realities that, like, shit, in all the AVID classes, it's only white people, and in this ISS class that I'm in right now, in school suspension, it's us. It doesn't make sense, and it shouldn't make sense, and it shouldn't be like this. So it's because that was my lived experience. I understand that we have to fight together collectively to call these systems out and to call out our own folks who are perpetuating that. And it's been like this for years. Like
Both sides. Yeah.
we just watched a documentary that talked about the Chicano movement in the 1960s. Even they were pissed at the older establishment gatekeepers who were upholding white supremacy, who were accepting this idea of anti-blackness that is them connecting to whiteness, because whiteness uses brown folks who are a lighter shade, because colorism is a thing that exists in our community, and using them to connect to whiteness to combat blackness. And that's a real system.
Yeah.
So our work, brown folks, we have to intentionally work to decolonize those concepts and find ways to push that to the masses to say, look, this is the truth. This is what's really happening, and this is how we're being taken advantage by the system, because you're only being happy about the crumbs that the system is giving you. So, I mean, I don't know about the pressure, but with like having a sister like Pam, who I work with honestly, and who I consider family, having people who I work with every day, the folks who worked in our team were primarily black and brown, who worked in our electoral team. And the discussions that we're having, like we see the truth, and we see the end goal, which is our collective liberation, and we're going to do whatever we can to get there, because white supremacy ain't it, and we're going to fight it as much as we can.
With all power to the people. It's gonna take all power of the people.
That's right.
Man, I just want to say, man, I can go a whole nother hour, but I'm not gonna keep you here. Like I said, guys, I appreciate y'all for coming through tonight. Pam, Daniel, from United Fort Worth. Also, guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Black Empowerment Movement. Like, share, subscribe. Also, do y'all have a YouTube channel, or y'all want to give out y'all social media platforms real quick?
Yeah, we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. A little less on Twitter, but
Okay.
Facebook and
Same here.
Instagram. Facebook and Instagram mainly. United Fort Worth.
All right, guys. Okay, that wrap up another broadcast of Revolutionary Talk. Right now, we just got finished talking with United Fort Worth. So, till next time, we'll see you later. And as we always say, all power to the people.